Are there any senators wishing to vote or change his or her vote? There being none, there are 59 ayes and 36 nays. So the motion to table, the motion to concur in the House amendment to Senate amendment to H.R. 2608, the motion to table passes.
Mr. President.
The majority leader.
I now move to concur in the House amendment to the Senate amendment H.R. 2608 with an amendment.
Clerk will report.
The Senator from Nevada, Mr. Reed, moves to concur in the House amendment to the Senate amendment to H.R. 2608 with an amendment numbered 656.
Mr. President, I ask for the yeas and nays on that.
Is there a sufficient second? There appears to be. The yeas and nays are ordered.
Mr. President, I have a cloture motion at the desk.
The clerk will report.
Cloture motion. We, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, hereby move to bring to a close the debate on the Reed motion to concur in the House amendment to the Senate amendment to H.R. 2608 with an amendment numbered 656, signed by 17 senators as follows.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that reading the names be waived.
Without objection.
I now have a second agreement at the desk.
Clerk will report.
The Senator from Nevada, Mr. Reed, proposes an amendment number 657 to amendment number 656.
Mr. President, I have a motion to refer the House message to the Appropriations Committee with instruction to report back forthwith, but with an amendment.
The clerk will report.
The Senator from Nevada, Mr. Reed, moves to refer the House message on H.R. 2608 to the Senate Appropriations Committee with instructions to report back forthwith with an amendment numbered 658.
As to the yeas and nays on that.
Is there a sufficient second? There appears to be. The yeas and nays are ordered.
I have an amendment to my instruction. That's also at the desk.
The clerk will report the amendment.
The Senator from Nevada, Mr. Reed, proposes an amendment numbered 659 to the instructions of the motion to refer.
As to the yeas and nays on that.
Is there a sufficient second? Appears to be. The yeas and nays are ordered.
I have a second degree amendment to my instructions at the desk.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Senator from Nevada, Mr. Reed, proposes an amendment numbered 660 to amendment number 659.
I ask unanimous consent the mandatory requirement under Rule 22 be waived with respect to the cloture motion that I just filed.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I now ask unanimous consent.
Is there objection?
No. Mr. President.
The Republican leader.
No.
No.
Without objection, then.
Mr. President, I now ask unanimous consent the vote on the motion to invoke cloture on the motion to concur with amendment occur at 5:30 p.m. Monday, September 26th.
Is there objection?
Reserving the right to object, and with the indulgence of my good friend, the Majority Leader, let me just make some brief remarks about where we are. For anyone who's confused about what's going on in Congress right now, let me make it easy. In order to keep the government running beyond next week, Congress needs to pass a short-term bill that funds government operations at a spending level both parties can agree to. The good news is we've already agreed on a spending level. That's already been done. And last night the House of Representatives passed a bill that meets that figure that we agreed on a couple of months ago. Here's the holdup. Because of some of the horrible weather we've had over the past several weeks, we've all agreed to add emergency funds that we didn't originally plan in this bill. And Republicans have identified a couple of cuts to make sure we don't make the deficit any bigger than it already is, including an offset that Leader Pelosi has used in the past. The rest is from a cut to a loan guarantee program that gave us the Solyndra scandal. Now, I think we can all agree that this program should be put on hold until we get more answers. But our friends on the other side don't like the idea. They'd rather just add these funds to the deficit. Why? Because they say that's the way we've always done things around here. Well, I think there's a lesson we can draw from the debates we've been having here over the last 6 months. It's that the American people won't accept that excuse any longer. The whole "that's the way we've always done it" argument is the reason we've got a $14 trillion debt right now. If we pass this bill, FEMA will have the funds they need to respond to these emergencies. That's not the issue here. What's at issue is whether we're going to add to the debt or not. Now, we have a path forward to get disaster funding done right here today. There's absolutely no reason, in my judgment, to delay funding for disasters until Monday, as my friend the Majority Leader is now asking us to do. I don't think we ought to delay at all. Now, we just received the amendment a few minutes ago, but we're aware of what it does. And I think it's important for us to try to resolve this issue sooner rather than later. Let's just walk through the next few days. If we don't have this vote until Monday, then that leaves 24 hours or so before the Jewish holidays begin, and then several days before the end of the fiscal year. It strikes me that we'd be better off to go ahead and have this vote now and enter into the discussions that will probably now be delayed until sometime Monday night to see how we can resolve this impasse between the House and Senate. We'd be happy to have the cloture vote on my friend the Majority Leader's proposal right now, rather than Monday night, so we could get a clear sense of where we stand. So it's my view that we ought to have the vote today rather than wait till Monday and basically squander the next few days toward getting an agreement we know we have to reach. Therefore, Mr. President, and I thank my friend the Majority Leader for letting me explain my position, I object.
Mr. President.
Objection is heard.
Mr. President.
The Majority Leader.
First of all, my friend, I'm sure, understands that this great piece of legislation that was sent to us by the House received 36 votes over here. It was tabled on a bipartisan basis. Mr. President, the matter that's now before the Senate is really a nice piece of legislation. It funds the government till November 18th. That's what the House wanted. It also has money in the bill to take care of FEMA. And we recognize that even though we passed a bill here with bipartisan support that had $6.9 billion, which we believe was an appropriate figure, in an effort to compromise in this CR, we have the number that the House thinks is a better number. That's what is before us. And so, Mr. President, my suggestion to my friend, and he is my friend, is that the two Democratic leaders, Reid and Pelosi, the two Republican leaders, McConnell and Boehner, should just cool off for a little bit, work through this. There's a compromise here, and the compromise is now before the Senate. Everyone once in a while needs a little cooling off period. The government's not shutting down. I've spoken to Mr. Fugate myself. FEMA's not out of money. We'll come here Monday. More reasonable heads will prevail, and I would hope over the weekend that the four leaders can lead their troops in the right direction. So I again ask unanimous consent to vote on the motion to invoke cloture on the motion to concur with an amendment to occur at 5:30 p.m. Monday, September 26th.
Is there objection?
Mr. President, reserving the right to object, obviously here in the Senate we would have a 60-vote vote, and that's what we will have Monday afternoon. I see no reason why we shouldn't advance that till now, so it can be clear whether or not this measure would pass the Senate. I'm pretty confident it will not, and I don't see any purpose to be served by delaying the outcome of that, making the outcome clear to Monday when we could have a clear outcome today. Therefore, I object.
Mr. President, first
the
of all,
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, we have a piece of legislation on the desk that takes care of all the issues. It takes care of funding FEMA after October 1st. It takes care of the CR after October 1st, funds the government after October 1st. It also takes care of FEMA for the foreseeable future. That's a nice piece of legislation. It's not our number, it's the House number. So I would ask unanimous consent that the Reid motion to concur in the House amendment to the Senate amendment, H.R. 2608, with Amendment 656 be agreed to. Motion reconsidered be considered made and laid on the table with no intervening action or debate, and these statements relating to this bill be placed in the record at the appropriate places if read. In fact, what we're asking here is the CR with the FEMA language be passed.
Is there objection?
Mr. President, we'll have that vote on Monday. I object.
I renew my request.
Objection is heard.
I renew my request. Did you object? Vote Monday, is that right? And I would tell everyone, Mr. President, as my friend said, we'll have the vote on Monday. We'll keep the vote open. If people are really pressed on planes, I'll work with the Republican leader to make sure that everyone's protected as much as possible.
Is there objection to the renewed request for Monday? Without objection, so ordered.
Note the absent quorum, Mr. President.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
The senator from Washington.
Mr. President, I ask that the quorum call be dispensed with.
Is there objection?
Mr. President.
Without objection. Senator from Washington.
Mr. President, I ask consent to speak as if in morning business.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. I know my colleagues here want to join in on the debate that just transpired, but I wanted to take a minute to talk about Senate Bill 1542 that passed last night. And I know just as people are frustrated here with everything that's going on, I think it is important to stop for a second when something does pass, and it is good policy, that we talk about it, and that is the Child and Family Services Improvement and Innovation Act. Congress took a pretty big step last night in improving the lives of children by the passage of this legislation. It's about keeping families together. It's about rewarding government efficiency and driving down costs, and it's about giving flexibility to invest in programs that are proven to work for kids and families. This bill is about America's children. It's about making sure that America's foster care program works for children so that they can keep their families together. Too often, our federal policies have punished states who have innovative programs, giving states money based on how many kids were still in foster care, instead of rewarding success and innovation that help transition children out of the foster care system and back with their families. Let me tell you what has happened in Washington State. We've been implementing innovative programs to improve foster care for many years now. When Washington State noticed a disproportionate number of Native American children being placed in foster care, our advocates took action and implemented the Washington Indian Child Welfare Act, developing strategies for strengthening tribal relationships and promoting the best interests of Native American children. When Washington State noticed in general how long children were staying in foster care, advocates took action, this time implementing policies to help reduce the length of stay for children in out-of-home care. As a result, the median length of stay for children in out-of-home care declined almost 100 days between 2009 and 2011. In addition, Washington State reduced its foster care caseload by 13.8% during a similar time period. Unfortunately, instead of being rewarded for these actions, we were penalized, and that is what this legislation has helped to correct. In fact, we lost $2.7 million during that time period. So this legislation helps us, instead of punishing Washington State for keeping kids out of foster care, helps us ensure the kind of innovation that will help us to make sure that the best programs are implemented. This allows Washington to increase our capacity to keep doing the things that keep children who have been in the foster care system from being in the foster care system the entirety of their childhood. This instead drives them hopefully successfully back with their families. Now our state can invest in evidence-based programs that have proven to work, and just as this legislation will help us to do, it will make sure that children don't bounce from foster home to foster home on a continual basis. We will help to keep kids out of the care system, but when possible, place them back safely with families. Washington State Representative Ruth Kagi, who's been a tireless advocate for this system, said it best: the Title IV e-waiver helps the state move from purchasing specific services to purchasing specific outcomes. I want to thank Chairman Baucus and Ranking Member Hatch for their timely and innovative work on this legislation. I wish my colleagues could have been at the hearing that was held earlier this year when Senator Baucus asked young adults who had been part of the foster system for their entire lives how to change the system. I want to thank the chairman for taking into consideration the specific improvements and innovation that Washington State has advocated for. And I want to thank my colleague, Representative Jim McDermott, and the Washington State legislators who worked on this, including an organization, Partners for Our Children, and the Children's Home Society of Washington, and the various social workers and advocates that in our state continue to try to innovate when it comes to foster care in America. This legislation is a major step forward to promote innovation on a federal basis and to help keep families together. In doing so, we will have the benefit of also driving more efficiency and driving down the cost. But more importantly, we're going to be working to strengthen America's children and families by trying effectively to keep them together. I thank the President, and I yield the floor.
President.
The Senator from Michigan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to speak for a few moments about what is happening, what has been happening all week here in the Senate and in the House of Representatives. First of all, this year we've seen a terrible string of natural disasters that have shut down businesses, left families homeless across America. As chair of the Agriculture Committee, I'm certainly very concerned about the flooding along the Mississippi and Missouri rivers and the record droughts that have devastated the livelihoods of men and women who grow our food across America. In response to that, the Senate, on a bipartisan basis, a strong bipartisan basis, responded to provide the funding for FEMA to help with communities across America, 48 states, to be able to respond and be able to do what we always do as Americans, to be able to step up and work together and meet these kinds of natural disasters and the help that's needed. We sent that to the House. The House decided, on the other hand, that they not only would lower the funding amount, even though we know that means just multiple times now having to keep churning to work something out, but they've cut the amount, and then they added to it an effort to cut in half a public-private sector effort that is creating jobs. Now, I know people in Michigan and people across the country would be scratching their heads going, wait a minute, did I hear this right? We're stepping up to help families who've had their house wiped out or their business wiped out or their farm wiped out or some other horrendous challenge because of natural disasters. In order to help them, the House Republicans are saying we have to cut jobs. That makes absolutely no sense. And I would say that while Michigan was very fortunate that we were not one of the 48 states that has lost, because of weather disasters, lost homes or businesses or jobs for families, Mr. President, we have had a different kind of disaster that has been going on, and it's an economic disaster. It's a jobs disaster. I find it appalling that on the one hand, we see strong support on the other side of the aisle to rebuild homes and businesses and roads and schools in Iraq, in Afghanistan. We're not saying there, well, gosh, we need to take away an effort to fund jobs or education here at home to be able to fund what we're doing in Iraq and Afghanistan. But when it comes to helping people in America, somehow we can't just work together and get that done without having to pit one state who has a jobs crisis against another state who has a flood or a hurricane or a drought. I don't find that to be very American. I think it's time to stop playing politics when hundreds of thousands of families and businesses have been devastated by unprecedented strings of floods, tornadoes, hurricanes, wildfires, and other natural disasters. We ought to be stepping up, doing what we did in the Senate, passing a bipartisan bill to help those families, those businesses, those farms, without playing politics and trying to hurt other states that have been hit by other kind of economic disasters. Mr. President, we have 14 million people out of work in this country, and that doesn't count people working part-time, 2 jobs, 3 jobs, or trying to piece it all together in some way. I mean, we know it's much higher than that when you count those individuals and families. And for each and every one of them, their job search is an emergency. It's an emergency every time they think about how to put food on the table for their family. It's an emergency every month when they have to scrape together the money they need for rent or to pay the mortgage. It's an emergency every time these men and women are filling out applications every day, going to job fairs, going on the Internet, trying to fill out forms, getting in lines to find the best way to be able to get back to work. It's an emergency. So to me, it is outrageous that the House of Representatives, the Republicans in the House, have included a job-killing offset to what is an important disaster assistance bill, to pull the rug out from businesses across the country and put up to 50,000 American jobs at risk. Let me tell you about what this particular program is. And I'm proud to have championed this, initiated it in the energy bill back in 2007, bipartisan bill signed by President Bush. It was slow to get going initially to get the funding. I'm proud that President Obama embraced it and moved forward with this to be able to put in place an alternative vehicle manufacturing loan program to help retool plants in America so we wouldn't be losing the production of new small plug-in electric vehicles and other new technology vehicles to other countries. It's a loan program to retool plants in America, and it's working. In Michigan, these retooling loans made it possible for Ford Motor Company to save 1,900 jobs at their Michigan assembly plant in Wayne, Michigan, so they could build the all-new Ford Focus Electric and the battery electric Focus in America. And in the process of that, between the retooling loans and our partnership with industry to invest in advanced battery technology, we are now bringing jobs back from Mexico. How many times have I heard colleagues on the floor talking about how we want to make sure we're exporting products, not jobs, and that we want to bring jobs back? What the House Republicans have done is to cut in half an initiative with the private sector that is actually bringing jobs back from other countries. So far, 41,000 jobs saved or created through this effort around the country. Obviously, I care deeply about Michigan and have fought for this. But we're talking about Indiana, Illinois. We're talking about Florida and Louisiana and California and all across our country where we are seeing communities have the opportunity to retool plants that would be idle, empty, an eyesore, and be able to bring those back with new technologies that are going to get us off of foreign oil and are creating jobs. 41,000 jobs so far. And the real insult to me, it was I look at what's happening to people in my state and across the country, is that they are poised to be giving out up to 11 additional loans to partner with business in the next couple of months that will create somewhere between 40 and 50,000 new jobs, saving or creating new jobs in the next few weeks. And right when this is about to happen, the House Republicans are saying, oh no, in order to help the folks in Joplin, Missouri who are wiped out as a community, we want to make sure that we're not creating jobs in Michigan, that we're not creating jobs in Indiana, Ohio, Illinois, Florida, Louisiana, California, Minnesota, wherever it is, that somehow we have to pit Americans against each other. That's not the America I know and love, Mr. President. You know, in Michigan, we don't have a weather emergency, but we stand with every single state on this floor, every single member who has had one. We stand as Americans together to support people across this country. But we say stop when that means that somehow an effort to make things in America, manufacturing, the backbone of our economy, is somehow attacked one more time and partnerships taken away in order to make that happen. It makes absolutely no sense. And so that's what this debate is about. And I want to share some comments because we've received a lot of support, and I want to just share a couple of comments, if I might, on the floor. The National Association of Manufacturers, Mr. President, has sent a letter opposing the defunding of this particular partnerships, and they say defunding the Advanced Technology Vehicle Manufacturing Loan Program will hurt manufacturers and their employees. Now, everybody's spending a whole lot of time talking about jobs around here. And unbelievably, in the middle of talking about jobs and how we need to create jobs and how we need to support employers and how we need to make sure we're competing internationally, by the way, with folks like China that says, come on over, we'll build the plant for you. Forget a loan that you're going to pay back with interest. We'll just build it for you. Come on over. And by the way, we'll steal your patents and manipulate our currency and make sure you get, you know, the toughest deal possible to compete with us. But that's what they do. And so we put together something that says we're going to partner with the private sector to be able to keep the jobs in America. And it's working. It's actually working. Jobs are coming back. We are rebuilding communities. We are rebuilding plants. We are helping to get off of foreign oil because we are focused on new electric vehicles and an advanced battery technology industry where, because of our efforts, we've gone from producing 2% of the world's batteries on our way to producing 40%, having the capacity to be able to manufacture and create 40% of the world's batteries within the next 3 years. Why? Because we've been working together in partnerships with industry, which is what our industry is competing against around the world. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce said the Advanced Technology Vehicle Manufacturing Loan Program promotes manufacturing in the U.S. and is an important component of America's energy security. Right? We all want to get off of foreign oil. We don't want to be buying oil from folks that we don't like and they don't like us, and we can't trust them. And we have an opportunity through the efforts that we're focused on around alternative vehicles, battery initiatives, to get off of foreign oil. So, Mr. President, this makes absolutely no sense to me. We have multiple other letters, the Alliance for Automobile Manufacturers, the Blue-Green Alliance. We have others who have come out and shared that as well. I would simply say this, that we're at a moment, we know we need to pass continuing resolution on the regular budget. We have a new process for a super committee to look at how we take on and tackle the issues around our national debt and economic growth. And during the process that set that up, there was an agreement on the budget numbers, and we have the ability to pass that now. We have passed a bill to help our citizens across the country who have had weather disasters, natural disasters. We came together in the Senate to do that. The House has that. There's one thing standing in the way. Whether or not at this time we're going to say to people in Michigan and in other states where the economic disaster has been overwhelming, that we're going to pit your need for jobs against somebody else's need to have their home or their street or their school rebuilt. That is not who we are in America. I don't believe Americans support that strategy. I think it's outrageous that there is a proposal that passed, and I want to thank my House Democratic colleagues and my House colleagues in Michigan. The Democratic leadership in the House were waging a fierce battle to protect those jobs. This is about making things in America. It's about rejuvenating an advanced manufacturing sector that is critical. We're not going to have a middle class if we don't make things in America. We're not going to have a middle class. This particular partnership, which is nothing more than a loan repaid with interest, but a support for our communities to rebuild. Rebuild, not in Afghanistan, not in Iraq, in America. Rebuild communities, create jobs. It's working. It's beginning to bring jobs back. And it's outrageous that they have decided to take half of the funding for this partnership away. And so I want to support our effort to send over the continuing resolution on the budget that we need. I want to thank my caucus and our leadership for standing firm and standing up for American jobs. That's what we care about. That's what we've been fighting for. And along the way, we're going to make sure that we're doing everything we can to help citizens who have been so devastated by the natural disasters across this country. Thank you, Mr. President.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
ask unanimous consent to dispense with the roll.
Without objection.
I also ask unanimous consent request for a committee to meet during today's session of the Senate. It has the approval of the majority and the minority leader. I ask unanimous consent that this request be agreed to and that this request be printed in the record.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to come to the floor and spend the next 15 minutes or so, and maybe even longer, to support the arguments made just recently, and I might say eloquently and passionately, by the senator from Michigan, who was one of the key architects of this very successful job creation program that the Republican House leadership is trying to kill. That is, in large measure, what this debate this weekend and through next week is about. And that is why, almost unanimously, Democrats in the Senate are supporting our Democratic caucus in the House as we try to bring this debate forward so the American people can understand it and hopefully give their voice of support for what we're trying to do, keep government operating and keep jobs being created in this country, which is a struggle. We know we're not creating as many as we would like, but one of the programs that's creating thousands of jobs and has broad support in America, and I'm going to read the groups supporting it in just a minute. For some reason, Republican leader in the House, Eric Cantor, decided last week, even as the winds were affecting his district and the Hurricane Irene was challenging the East Coast, a portion of the country that he represents, he decided that we needed to find an offset so that we could send money to his district and to other districts across the country, and just picked this program. They couldn't have picked a worse one, because this program is actually working. It has already demonstrated it has revitalized communities. But in addition, Mr. President, it's a program that's created jobs that several dozen Republican House members have sent private letters to the Secretary of Energy asking for the money to go back to their districts, but publicly they want to gut the program. So Democrats have decided to bring this to the attention of the American public. How is it that dozens of Republican leaders, and I have those letters that I'm going to submit to the record, how is it that dozens of Republican leaders write private letters, which are public record, but, you know, they didn't put them, you know, they don't issue them to the press, they send them to the Secretary. You can get copies of them. I did this morning and have them. But they're private letters to the Secretary asking for this program to loan money to a public-private partnership to create jobs in their district, and then they go home and they talk about their efforts to create jobs, and they come back to Washington and try to gut the program under the guise that they need the money to help disaster victims. That is what this debate is about, and that's why the Democrats are not, at least at this point, and I hope over the weekend and through next week, going to give in to that nonsense and hypocrisy. And I hope the President and the White House will fight hard along with the Democrats, and I hope some of the Republicans that have signed these letters will think twice when this vote comes up again. And I hope the press is reading these letters and asking these Republicans whose signature is on these letters one question. How is it possible that you sent a letter to the Secretary asking for a loan to support job creation in your district, and then at the same time stand on the Senate floor and gut the same program, and then go back home and claim you're helping to create jobs in America? I'm going to start with the first letter, which is the most interesting to me, from Darrell Issa. He's a member of Congress. He actually chairs an oversight committee. I think his district is in California. He's a Republican from California. He's a very powerful member of the House. I'm going to read his whole letter. I write to express my support of the Aptera Motors application for a loan under the Department of Energy's 136 Advanced Technology Vehicle Manufacturing Incentive Program, otherwise known as the ATVMIP, the program that he voted last night to eliminate, the same one. Funding will allow Aptera to establish U.S. manufacturing facilities for the commercial production of its plug-in and hybrid electric cars. Aptera Motor plans to purchase and equip manufacturing facilities to begin commercial-scale production of its energy electric vehicles. Awarding this opportunity to Aptera Motors will greatly assist a leading developer of electric vehicles in my district. Electric vehicle initiatives like Aptera will aid U.S. long-term energy goals by shifting away from fossil fuels and using viable, renewable energy sources like plug-in electric energy. Additionally, Aptera's vehicles will reduce dependence on foreign oil, enhance energy security. Aptera's project will also promote domestic job creation through California as well as in other states. Unlike many other electric vehicles, Aptera's energy-efficient electric vehicles have a range of over 100 miles per charge and the possibility to become one of the most energy-efficient vehicles in the world. A loan to Aptera will help accelerate the move from gasoline-powered vehicles to cleaner electric vehicles. I urge you to give Aptera Motor Advanced Vehicle Manufacturing Incentive Program funding application full consideration. If I can be of further assistance, please do not hesitate to contact me or, amazingly, my press assistant. Now, normally when I write these letters, I say if I can be further assistance on this, please contact me and my energy assistant, because the energy ledge person usually handles this. But he says that we should call his press secretary. So I guess the press secretary could go back to his district and claim that he's doing a great job creating programs in California. And maybe the press actually writes that Darrell Issa, Republican leader, is promoting manufacturing in California, because this is what he says in his district, and this is the letter he sends to the secretary. But when he's in the floor of the House last night, he voted to gut this program. That's what this debate is about, and I am looking forward to having it. The next letter that I'm going to read, and I'm going to do this all week, so I hope the press just gets ready to ask these Republican leaders, how could you possibly have the gall to hold press opportunities in your district, promising people that you're helping them create jobs, and then come back to Washington and cut the rug out from underneath their feet with a bogus excuse that you have to come up with $1 billion when the real need is only 175. I checked with Craig Fugate, very good friend of mine. I'm the chair of his committee. I talk to him all the time. When the real need for FEMA in 2011 is $175 million. But under the guise of having to provide $1 billion they want to gut this program that's creating jobs, and they themselves have asked for these loans to be made in their district. This is the next letter signed by several members, and I am going to submit their names to the record. There's several Republicans. I'm sorry, from this letter I'm not able to determine which ones are Republicans and which ones are Democrats, but there are many Republicans on this letter.
Without objection.
Thank you. And I'm going to read this. To Secretary Chu, the state of California has traditionally assumed a leading role in fighting global warming, working to eliminate our dependence on foreign sources of oil. We want to commend you for also taking effective steps towards achieving these goals. As part of this effort, the Department of Energy's Electric Drive and Vehicle Battery and Component Manufacturing Initiative, same program, is currently reviewing submissions for the construction of new lithium-ion battery facilities in the United States. This initiative is a huge step forward in our efforts to improve our environment, eliminate our dependence on foreign sources of oil, and create a modern green-collar workforce here in the United States. Qualion, an innovative American company located in California, can be a valuable partner in your efforts because it is ready today to directly support President Obama's goal to have 1 million plug-in hybrid cars on the road by 2015. Qualion is a world leader in the development of customized lithium batteries for medical, military, aerospace, and vehicle applications. If Qualion is successful in its bid for grants through the Departments of Energy, Electric Drive, and Vehicle Battery Component Manufacturing, it is set to immediately execute the construction of state-of-the-art manufacturing facilities to produce, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The projects that, with this grant funding and the proposed facility, could be fully operational by 2012 and could produce more than 20,000 of these new batteries each year. In addition, this is the killer. This is the killer. In addition, Qualcomm projects that this funding will create more than 2,300 new and long-term jobs nationwide. And this is the program that Representative Cantor decided to use as an offset so he could fool the American people into believing that we need to find an offset to offset $1 billion of expenses when we only have $175 million in expenses. So they write the letters privately to the Secretary asking for funding to go in their districts to create jobs, and then they come to Washington and they gut the program for no reason. This is another letter a little close to home. This is a letter I wrote. I was joined by my colleague, Senator Vitter, Republican from Louisiana, and my Republican counterpart, Rodney Alexander, who represents the district in my state. We sent this letter on December 21st. We are writing to reiterate our strong support for Next Auto Works company loan application under the Department of Energy's Advanced Technology Vehicle Manufacturing Program. Next Auto Works resubmitted a revised application in May that was almost immediately declared substantially complete and expeditiously reviewed for technical and financial merit. We appreciate the Department's work to move the application through several critical stage gates over the past several months. Next Auto Works has the ability to transform communities in Louisiana by bringing critical economic growth and jobs to our state and region. As you know, the company plans to re-equip a former Guide Corporation plant in Monroe, Louisiana that was shuttered in 2006 and establish a production facility that would approximately create 1,400 direct jobs and an additional 1,800 indirect jobs to Northeast Louisiana. In addition, the project will create thousands of jobs at supply facilities across the U.S. The state of Louisiana and local communities have already demonstrated their commitment by offering this company $82 million in grants, $128 million in employee training services, and an estimated $33.8 million in tax abatements to support the project. This is how strongly our Republican governor and Republican legislature in Louisiana feel about this project, that we've put up state and local money to see if we could attract this loan from the federal government to get this going. They can go without me, yeah. Signed by my colleague, Senator Vitter, and signed by my friend and colleague, Representative Alexander, who represents this district. This is one of our #1 economic development projects in the state of Louisiana. And what did the representative do last night? He voted to gut the program. All right, I have dozens of other letters, but I'm going to pause because I think I've made my point. But I'm going to read every one that I have between now and when this debate ends. And I just pray that the press will do their job and ask the members that voted and sent these letters, why did you send a letter to the Secretary asking for the program and then turn around and gut the program when you came to Washington? I'd like to ask for 5 more minutes.
Without objection.
Now, the other point is this. This is not just an issue for like one state or 2 states. That's why Democrats feel really strongly about this, because this is really about the whole country. The President has declared disasters this year in 48 of the 50 states. Now, you know, maybe if we just had disasters in 1 or 2 places and they weren't that terrible, maybe we could figure out some way. But the problem here is we have disasters in all states. And I want to show you what these pictures look like because they're heart-wrenching. This is New Jersey. This is someone's household belongings. This is a home that is completely uninhabitable. I'm not sure how high the water is, but this is what your home looks like after a flood. I can still see those and visualize what it looked like in Katrina and smell more than even the visual. This is what New Jersey looked like a couple of weeks ago. Now, this water has gone down, but this is Bound Brook, New Jersey. We don't know much about this town. We hear about Trenton. We hear about New York. I've never been to Bound Brook, New Jersey, but I'm sure it's a lovely place, and it needs our help. So what does Representative Cantor do? He comes to Washington, he looks at places like this, and he just decides out of the sky blue that he is now going to exert his power by demanding an offset for disaster funding when it's not necessary. The offset is way more than what is required, and again, it's an offset that's creating jobs in America. Now, I want to say something else about the danger of requiring offsets and respond directly to what the Minority Leader, Mitch McConnell, said earlier today. He said, I think he said something like, the reason that we want to require offsets is because we've got to stop doing things the same way around here. And just because we've never required them in the past, that's no reason to not require them now. And I understand that. I'm kind of a person that likes to do things differently. I like to change things. I like, you know, to do, just to say just because we've done it in the past. But I want to remind the leader here that not one Republican, to my mind, either in the Senate or the House, ever asked for 5 minutes to debate $1 to offset war or rebuilding in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I want to put this chart up. The red the red. This is a 10-year from 2001. So this is a chart that shows, let's say, the last year, because I think it's important for the public to understand, not just today, but 10 years. If you charted, which we've done here, a lot of the supplemental spending, emergency spending, and disaster spending. This is not just for natural disasters. These are for emergencies, like when we went to war in Iraq was an emergency. When we went to Afghanistan, it was an emergency. When we had the avian flu, that's an emergency. It's not a disaster. So this is disasters and emergencies. All of these red times, these red bars, let's take this one here. It says Iraq and Afghanistan, $79 billion. You see the zero here? That's zero offset. $79 billion, no offset. Here we go here. This was money this is war money and tsunami money that we actually sent to the tsunami. Remember when we had the tsunami in Indonesia? We sent some money over there. Did Eric Cantor come to the floor and say that we need to offset the money? No. And so we sent that money, and less than 2% of it was offset. Here is another, Iraq, Afghanistan. None of it was offset, $87.6 billion. So I think disaster victims in his own district and around the country are saying, so why are we now in this debate trying to find an offset we really don't need for a program that really works? That's a good question. If you wanted to find an offset, you should find another program. The offset only required is $175 million, but that makes too much sense. So I want the Republican leadership to know that they are risking a very important debate. I don't believe that we should even talk about shutting the government down. People are tired of that. We just went through a challenge to the whole economy with the debt ceiling limit. But enough is enough, and Democrats should not, in my view, cave on this point. We should fight and get them to compromise, which is reasonable. Now, in addition to these arguments, I want to put up a hard chart to look at, but I think for the Gulf Coast Republicans and senators, it's a very important chart. One of the dangers of requiring an offset is number one, like right now, it's virtually impossible to get 535 members to all agree on an offset. And so what happens is if you demand to have one, you put the victims waiting while we debate. It also doesn't help to choose an offset that's very popular on one side. There might be a program that we could, over the next couple of months, decide is unnecessary. But you can't do that in a few days of the disaster. It takes time. They should know that. And for the Gulf Coast senators, let me explain what this is. I had this done after Katrina just to show the vulnerability of the Gulf Coast. All of these red lines that look like spaghetti, and then these bigger lines, the blue and the yellow and the orange, these are all hurricanes that have actually hit the United States between 1851 and 2008. It's a very frightening chart. One of the reasons I think that Senator Rubio from Florida is voting with us is because he's seen a picture of this chart. And that's how many hurricanes have hit Florida since 1851. And he is most certainly aware from this state that if he takes the position that you have to require an offset to fund disasters, that his job as a senator will be very, very, very difficult, even more challenging than it is today, because the next time a hurricane hits Florida, he's going to have to go sit down with the budget folks and find out before he can offer his people the $2,000 in emergency aid, the $30,000 that helps them, the loans through the Small Business Committee, the loans to get their businesses back, that he's going to have to come up here and negotiate to find an offset. Now, last night, I watched the debate on the House side. I thought our Democratic colleagues did a beautiful job, and I want to thank them for their beautiful way that they spoke. I didn't see one Republican come to the floor, and they just had one of their leaders talking last night when the vote happened. Maybe they're a little embarrassed, because they should be, because I'm going to read the letters they sent. But also the Gulf Coast Republicans. I think you really have to think about this, because these storms, as you can see, I say to my people that I represent, we're in Hurricane Alley. And these storms come, and this is Hurricane Rita, the blue, which was one of the most devastating storms. That's why it's a thicker line. Hurricane Gustav is the orange. Hurricane Ike is the dark pink. And Hurricane Katrina is the yellow. All of these storms hit us and just wrecked the Gulf Coast. Now, let me say what happened after that. Haley Barbour, the governor of Mississippi, who's still the governor of Mississippi, came up here when George Bush was the president and got $4.6 billion without one penny of offset. And he got that within 60 days of the storm. Now, I'm going to repeat that. Governor Haley Barbour, who's still the governor of Mississippi, came to Washington, met with the president, and left with $4.6 billion to build Mississippi. They gave us, the Congress gave Louisiana, $5.4 billion, which I was very grateful for, but we had 70% of the damage, but only got 55% of the money. So we were shortchanged. I had to work for years. I finally got that squared away. But this is why Gulf Coast Republicans and Republican senators from the Gulf Coast should think not twice, but 3 times before they vote to require an offset. And I'm just saying, I am not going to forget this vote, because I chair this committee. And if you vote to require an offset and another storm hits your state, then it is going to be the responsibility on your shoulders to tell your people, I'm sorry I can't help you until I go to Washington and find an offset. And maybe it will get so ridiculous, and I'm going to call this the Cantor Doctrine. Maybe it will get so ridiculous that Eric Cantor will tell all the people in America. There was a cartoon in the newspaper about this. I'm having it blown up because it was really sad, but it's actually funny. There's a woman sitting on top of her roof. Her house is completely flooded, and she's completely flooded, and she's got a phone. And she calls FEMA, and FEMA says, we can't rescue you right now. We're looking for an offset. So maybe the new Cantor Republican model of pick yourself up by your bootstraps and swim away on your own will actually really be put into practice, because I think that's what they want. Because before you can be rescued, before the debris can be removed, you're going to have to sit down at the table with your husband and kids in a broken down house or trailer and suggest some offsets to send to your congressman before we can send you help? That is not right. That's what this debate is about. Now, do we eventually have to pay for these disasters? Absolutely. And the Wall Street Journal editorialized against me the other day, so let me answer them. They said, there goes Senator Landrieu. She doesn't think she has to pay for anything. That is not true. I believe we're paying right now for the war in Iraq, and it's very tough to pay for that, but we're finding a way through the super committee. We're paying for the war in Afghanistan. But we didn't have to find the offset before we could let our troops march in. We didn't have them standing at the border saying, stand right here, hold your fire. Eric Cantor's working on an offset for you. We sent the troops in, we let the bombers go, and we'll figure out how to pay for it later. So I'm telling the Republicans in the House, you better think very carefully about this vote. Now, Senator Reid has sent a very good compromise. He said, we'll give up our number, we'll take your number on FEMA, but we are not going to take this offset. Now, I still think, and I want to say for the record, as the chairman of this committee, 2.6 or 3.65 is not going to be enough to get us through all of next year. But it will get us through the next couple of weeks and months. Not months, maybe weeks. The government won't shut down. FEMA will have money to operate. As the leader said, it's not ideal. It's not what is in our bill, which is the best, which is a $6.5 billion level, which will fund not just FEMA, but it will fund the Corps of Engineers, community development, agriculture. What the House is doing only funds FEMA. It doesn't give any money to the Corps. It doesn't give any money to community development. It doesn't give any money to the farmers. So if you're sitting out there looking at your farm with your crops ruined, please don't think the House of Representatives is doing one thing to help you, because they're not. So I have given any number of reasons why this is an important debate to have. There is no guarantee that Democrats will win. But every now and then, it's a good thing to stand up for a principle. And I think this is a principle worth standing for and worth fighting for. And I hope if the press does its job over the next several days and ask these Republicans, how in the world can you send a private letter asking for funding and then come back to Washington and gut the same program? And if the press does their job, and if the people in our country will ask those same questions, maybe a few of these Republican leaders will compromise the way they should, either give up the offset, come up with a different one. And let me just close or come up with another one that's much less harmful. But let me also end with this. We have 3 letters that I'm going to submit to the record that also say, if you can't take my word for any of this, you could listen to the Chamber of Commerce. What did the Chamber of Commerce say? And I'm going to give you their letter. This is a wrong thing to do, the Chamber says. Don't eliminate this program. It's creating jobs in America. So the Republicans, I know they don't really like to listen to what I say a lot, but they should listen to the Chamber of Commerce. The National Manufacturing Association, a very conservative group, they sent the Republicans a letter saying, bad deal, don't do it. They did it anyway. And now I just got a letter from the U.S. Conference of Mayors. All of the mayors in the country, Republicans and Democrats, sent the letter to the House saying, don't do this. And they did it anyway. So the only people more powerful, the only group more powerful than the Chamber, than NAM, than the mayors, are the people themselves. And if this weekend the people will say to their representatives, don't cut out a program that's creating jobs, don't require disaster victims to have an offset, let's keep the government operating, and let's find a way to pay for this over time together and get this deficit under control. I am willing to do that. And as the chair of this committee, I promise them we can do better budgeting in the future. Nobody did it really great in the past. I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to work with them in any way. But let's not go down this dangerous and inappropriate road. And I suggest the absence of a quorum.
Mr. President.